When stomach problems mimic heart issues, Roemheld syndrome explained. So if you're somebody who's been suffering from heart palpitations, shortness of breath, pressure in your chest, arrhythmias of your heart, and even dizziness, you know how scary it is when these symptoms come upon you. Now, the correct first step always is to get your heart checked out. But what I'm discussing today is you've done that. You've gotten your heart checked out. You've had all the tests. You've been to the cardiologist, and they tell you your heart is fine. You do not have heart disease. Well, that's where Dr. Roemheld came in way back in 1912 when he created the syndrome named after himself, which he called cardio-gastric syndrome. Gastric just means your stomach. So he realized that there was a connection between the stomach and the heart that could basically mimic these heart symptoms. You're really having them. You're really having the shortness of breath. You're having the chest pressure. You're having the heart palpitations. You're really experiencing it, and there's nothing wrong with your heart, which, seems incongruous, but it is a real syndrome. And what it has to do with is your digestive tract. I'm going to explain that. And there's a mechanical issue, and there's also a nervous system issue, and I want to explain both. And even though Dr. Roemheld was back in the early 20th century, the references that I have substantiating this information are from very current. All right, so let's get into it. With the mechanical changes, what happens is that the stomach gets compressed, so there's pressure in your abdomen, it's putting pressure on your stomach, and your stomach gets compressed and it gets pushed upwards. When that happens, you can get acid reflux. Now, that's one symptom, but in addition to that, when the stomach gets compressed and it pushes up, what it runs into is called your diaphragm, your breathing muscle. And so the stomach pushes up on the breathing muscle, the diaphragm, and it gets a bit spasmed. You're still breathing, but it's not effortless. It feels a bit labored. You kind of got attention on taking breaths versus breathing, which should be something we don't think about at all. And when the diaphragm gets a bit spasmed, you can get short of breath. So that's where the short of breath issue comes from, because the diaphragm isn't floating up and down as beautifully and easily as it should. So you get short of breath. But the other thing that happens, I'm talking about mechanics here, stomach gets compressed, it gets pulled up, runs into the diaphragm. What's right above the stomach and the diaphragm on your left-hand side? Your heart. Now your heart has a sac around it. So when the stomach pushes up and it raises the diaphragm on that left side, the heart is very close anyway in your body, but that little elevation is enough to impinge upon that sac protecting your heart, and it says, get out of here. What are you doing in my spot? I don't want you here. And you can get heart palpitations. So that's the mechanical change. Literally, things are moving around in your body in a way they shouldn't, and every organ has its place and its position, and when it's altered, problems arise. Now there's also a nervous system component. That has to do with your vagus nerve, which is your longest cranial nerve. Now the vagus nerve goes almost everywhere in the human body. It's very particularly goes to your gastrointestinal tract, but it also goes to your heart, it also goes to the diaphragm, and it goes to your lungs. So when that change happens, when that stomach pushes up, gets compressed and pushes up, and it puts pressure on the diaphragm. Remember, the diaphragm is this breathing muscle that should be moving 2 to 5 inches up and down unencumbered. Now you've got the stomach jammed up into it, and its ability to not only move up and down, but actually kind of prevent acid reflux from occurring. It's got a bit of a valve that's called a pinchcock system, but it pinches off the esophagus as you inhale, preventing any reflux from occurring. But with enough pressure, that pinchcock gets breached, and so it can't have that nice pinching system as per design. And when it gets breached, what gets irritated is your vagus nerve. And so, by the way, your diaphragm, the breathing muscle, there's a right side and a left side. There's an opening down the middle, and that's where your esophagus passes through. That's the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. And what passes right along with it in between that opening of the diaphragm is your vagus nerve. So it travels the same path as your esophagus. So when the stomach gets pushed up and the diaphragm spasms, the vagus nerve gets irritated. And when that vagus nerve gets irritated, not only do you get the shortness of breath, but you get heart symptoms because the vagus also goes to the heart. So that's the connection. That's why they call it a gastro, stomach, cardiac reflex, because when the stomach gets irritated, and the esophagus, by the way, the heart can reflexively get irritated. So you have these very real symptoms that are certainly cardiac in nature. You're having heart palpitations, you're having chest pressure, but your heart's fine. So it's great that your heart's fine. It is the #1 killer of Americans, but you're still having these symptoms. It's still freaking you out. It's not normal. So what's the cause? The cause is what's happening to your stomach and your diaphragm, which we call hiatal hernia syndrome. Now, the great news about this is that it's very treatable. It's very natural, the treatment. It doesn't require drugs or surgery. And you can get that pressure to be relieved so that the stomach can relax again, and the diaphragm can relax again, and the vagus nerve is no longer irritated. So it's a process that has to happen to normalize digestive function and thereby then normalize diaphragm function and vagus nerve function. So it's, it's all of those areas that have to be addressed, but it's very able to be addressed naturally, so you don't have to keep suffering with this problem. So I hope that made sense, and I hope it validates you. That's the real key thing, is that what happens is you can go down this path of, I can't breathe and my heart's pounding out of my chest and now I'm getting anxious about it, and you can start be given drugs that are just sort of managing your symptoms when nobody's getting to the root cause of it. And you don't feel very validated because, there's something wrong, I know there's something wrong, find it. And it's not being found because we have a bit of a siloed system in this country. And, you come in with cardiac symptoms, you see a cardiologist, and he or she says you're fine, and you're relieved that you're fine, but then you're not fine because you keep having symptoms. So I want you to know it's a very real phenomena. Remember, step 1 is always see that cardiologist, but once you've done your due diligence on that part, then let's really get to the root cause. Name of my clinic, Root Cause Medical Clinic. That's why we're named that way. So there's much that can be done. If you want our help, we're happy to be here for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you know somebody suffering with this, and many people are, send them this video link, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, write me a comment. I love to hear from you. I answer pretty much all the comments that I get, and we'll talk soon.